Arrogant police officer arrests a Hell's Angel biker, thinking it's a routine stop, but when she finds a hidden high-tech gear, the small-town win turns into a nightmare. The biker is actually a deep-cover CIA operative, and her proud, snap-to-judgment arrest may have blown an operation that was days from stopping a deadly plot. Now a stern federal director shows up, the town's safety is on the line, and the man she cuffed keeps warning her she's made a mistake that could cost lives. Worst of all, her trusted young deputy is missing, and a live video shows the deputy standing over the captive, ready to set off something that would tear the town apart. How do you undo a single arrogant arrest when it might be the spark that destroys everything you swore to protect? The afternoon sun beat down on the hood of Officer Margaret Chen's patrol car, parked in the shade of a towering ponderosa pine. She sat perfectly still behind the wheel, eyes fixed on the winding mountain road that snaked down from the high country into Redemption Falls. The radio crackled softly with routine chatter, Mrs. Henderson's cat up a tree again, someone's sprinkler flooding the sidewalk on Maple Street. Small-town problems, safe problems. Maggie liked it that way. She took a slow sip of lukewarm coffee from her thermos, her gaze never leaving the road. 25 years she'd been doing this. 25 years of keeping this town safe, of knowing every family, every street corner, every potential trouble spot before it became actual trouble. Her record was spotless. Her methods were by the book, and her standards were ironclad. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermal currents. Maggie watched it for a moment, remembering when she used to find such things beautiful. Before Tommy died and took her ability to see beauty with him. The rumble reached her ears before she saw the motorcycle. Deep, throaty, unmistakable. Her spine stiffened. Her hand moved instinctively to her radio. The bike appeared around the far bend, sunlight glinting off chrome. Even from a distance, she could see the leather vest, the patches, the colors that marked him as what he was, Hell's Angels. The old anger rose in her chest like bile, hot and bitter and 30 years old, but feeling fresh as yesterday. She saw Tommy's face in her mind, 16, laughing, alive. Before the phone call came that shattered everything, before she learned what motorcycle gangs could do to a family, to a life. The bike drew closer. She could see the rider now, a big man, scarred face partially visible beneath his sunglasses, arms covered in tattoos that probably told 100 violent stories. The kind of man who thought the law didn't apply to him, the kind who hurt people and called it freedom. Her jaw tightened. The Harley roared past her position, going at least 15 over the limit. That was all she needed. Maggie flipped on her lights and pulled onto the road in one smooth motion, muscle memory, taking over. The siren chirped once, sharp and commanding. The bike slowed immediately, pulling to the shoulder without drama. That surprised her. Most of them ran or gave her trouble. She radioed in the stop, noting the license plate, her location, standard procedure, everything by the book, always. She approached the bike with her hand near her weapon, watching for any sudden movements. The rider sat motionless, hands visible on the handlebars, waiting. "License and registration," Maggie said, her voice flat and professional. The man turned his head slowly. Up close, she could see the scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. Prison fight, probably. His eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses, but she felt him studying her. "Ma'am." His voice was surprisingly calm, respectful even. "I've got my license in my vest pocket, registration's in the saddlebag. I'm going to reach for them slowly. That okay with you?" The courtesy threw her off for half a second. She recovered quickly. "Go ahead. Slow." He moved with deliberate care, producing a worn leather wallet and then fishing documents from the saddlebag. He handed them over without comment. Gabriel Stone. Colorado license. Bike was registered, tags current. Everything looked legitimate on paper, but Maggie knew better. These guys always kept their paperwork clean, made it harder to pin them down for the real crimes. "You know you were doing 65 in a 50? she asked. Yes, ma'am, I apologize. Beautiful day, open road. Wasn't paying attention like I should have been. She studied him, looking for the con, the angle. They were always working an angle. Mr. Stone, I'm going to need you to step away from the bike. Something shifted in his posture. Tension, maybe. But he complied without argument, moving with the controlled precision of someone who'd done this before. Is there a problem, officer? Just procedure, she lied. Her instincts were screaming now. Something about him, about the too neat papers, about the expensive equipment on his bike. I'm going to do a quick check of your vehicle. Ma'am, I don't consent to a search without probable cause. Your gang affiliation gives me probable cause, Maggie said coldly. This will go easier if you cooperate. He took off his sunglasses. His eyes were gray and steady, and in them she saw something that confused her. It looked almost like pity. You're making a mistake, he said quietly, one that could cost lives. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Please, you need to let me go. The desperation in his voice should have given her pause, should have made her question, but all she heard was another criminal trying to manipulate her, to use whatever con would get him out of trouble. She called for backup. The search took 45 minutes. She found the communications equipment tucked in a hidden compartment, sophisticated stuff, encrypted phones, devices she'd never seen before. Her heart raced with righteous vindication. She'd been right. He was exactly what she thought he was. You're under arrest, she said, reaching for her cuffs. He didn't resist, didn't argue, just looked at her with those gray eyes that held too much sadness for a criminal. What's your name, officer? He asked as she cuffed him. Chen. Margaret Chen. He nodded slowly. Officer Chen, I want you to remember something. When this all comes out, when you learn who I really am, remember that I don't blame you. You were just doing your job the only way you knew how. Save it for the judge, she said, guiding him toward her patrol car. The drive back to town took 20 minutes. He sat quietly in the back seat, staring out the window at the mountains, not fidgeting, not cursing, not demanding his phone call, just watching Redemption Falls come into view with the expression of a man saying goodbye. The station was quiet when she brought him in. Chief Morrison looked up from his desk, eyebrows rising at the sight of the Hell's Angel in cuffs. Good caller, Maggie. Found illegal communications equipment. Possible trafficking operation. She felt the familiar satisfaction of a job well done, of keeping her town safe. The booking process was smooth. He answered questions when required, stayed silent otherwise. When they fingerprinted him, she noticed his hands were scarred but clean. Calloused but in the wrong places for a mechanic or laborer. She locked him in the holding cell, the heavy door clanging shut with finality. He stood at the bars, looking at her with that same unreadable expression. You love this town, he said. It wasn't a question. More than you could understand. I understand more than you think. He paused. There are good people coming, Officer Chen. People who are going to be very angry with what you've done today, but I need you to know. I don't blame you. We all carry our ghosts. I can see yours. The words struck too close to home. She turned away, walking back to her desk with rigid shoulders. Behind her, the cell was silent except for the sound of him settling onto the narrow cot. Maggie sat down and pulled out the arrest forms, her pen scratching across the paper in the quiet station. Outside, the sun was setting over Redemption Falls, painting the mountains gold and purple. Beautiful, if she let herself see it. She didn't. She just filled out the forms, one line after another, documenting the arrest of Gabriel Stone. Age 48. Affiliation Hell's Angels. Motorcycle Club. Charges: possession of illegal surveillance equipment, suspected involvement in criminal conspiracy. The pen moved steadily across the page. Somewhere in the back of her mind, his words echoed. You're making a mistake that could cost lives. But she'd heard it all before. Every criminal had an excuse. Every arrest came with threats and manipulations. This was no different. She signed her name at the bottom of the report with a flourish, then filed it in her outbox. Another dangerous man off her streets. Another day keeping Redemption Falls safe. The silence settled over the station like a blanket. In the holding cell, Gabriel Stone closed his eyes and began to pray. The black SUV sliced through the afternoon sunlight like a blade, throwing sharp shadows across the asphalt as it pulled into the gravel lot. Maggie watched from the station window, her pen frozen above the arrest report. 3 more vehicles followed, unmarked sedans with government plates. Her stomach tightened. Chief Morrison appeared at her shoulder, his weathered face suddenly pale. "Maggie, did you—" The station door swung open with enough force to rattle the glass. The woman who entered commanded attention without saying a word. Tall, late 50s, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than Maggie's monthly salary. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her dark eyes swept the small station with the efficiency of someone who made quick assessments for a living. "I'm Director Sarah Matthews, Central Intelligence Agency." She held up credentials that made Maggie's heart drop into her boots. "I'm here about your prisoner, Gabriel Stone." Chief Morrison stepped forward, his hand outstretched in an automatic gesture of small-town politeness. "Ma'am, I'm Chief. I know who you are." Director Matthews's tone wasn't rude, just matter-of-fact. She didn't take his hand. "I need to speak with Officer Chen, privately." Maggie felt every eye in the station turn toward her. Deputy Frank looked up from his desk with concern written across his young features. Dispatch stopped mid-sentence on a phone call. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. "My office," Chief Morrison said quietly. The chief's office felt smaller, with Director Matthews in it. Maggie sat in the wooden chair across from the desk while Matthews remained standing, her posture military straight. Chief Morrison hovered by the door like he wasn't sure whether to stay or leave. "Officer Chen." Matthews's voice was crisp. "Do you understand what you've done?" Maggie lifted her chin. "I arrested a man riding with the Hells Angels who was carrying sophisticated communications equipment without proper documentation. I followed procedure. You arrested a decorated CIA operative." Each word hit like a hammer. "Gabriel Stone has been embedded with that motorcycle club for 3 years. 3 years of careful, dangerous work. And in the span of one afternoon, you've potentially compromised an operation that has national security implications." The words landed like punches. Maggie's breath caught in her chest. "That's not— he couldn't have been—" She stopped, her mind racing back to Gabe's calm cooperation, his cryptic warnings, the sadness in his eyes when he looked at her. He didn't identify himself. He couldn't. Matthews finally moved, placing both hands flat on the chief's desk and leaning forward. "Breaking cover would have put innocent lives at risk, including yours, officer." Chief Morrison made a small sound of distress. "What kind of operation are we talking about?" Matthews straightened, her expression hardening. "The kind where a blown cover doesn't just end a career, it ends lives." She pulled a tablet from her briefcase and tapped the screen. Gabriel Stone. Former Marine, 2 tours in Afghanistan. Decorated for valor. Recruited by the agency 12 years ago. Lost his son to gang violence 8 years back and requested the hardest assignments we had. The Hells Angels insertion was supposed to be his last. She turned the tablet toward Maggie. The photo showed a younger Gabe in dress blues, his face unlined, his eyes bright with purpose. The contrast to the scarred, tattooed man she'd locked in a cell made her chest ache. "His target," Matthews continued, "is a domestic terrorist cell that's been recruiting disaffected individuals with military backgrounds. We believe they're planning an attack on a civilian target, possibly within the next 72 hours. Stone was days away from identifying the final members and the location." Maggie's hands gripped the arms of the chair. "Was? His arrest triggered safety protocols. He's been extracted from the field. The cell knows something went wrong. They're either going to accelerate their timeline or scatter." Matthews's dark eyes bored into Maggie. "Either way, we've lost our best chance to stop them before they act." The silence in the office was suffocating. Maggie felt the weight of her mistake crushing down on her shoulders, stealing her breath. She'd been so certain, so righteous in her conviction that she was protecting her town. "I didn't know," she whispered. "No, you didn't." Matthews's tone softened fractionally. "But you made assumptions based on appearance, on prejudice, and those assumptions may cost lives." Maggie thought of Tommy, of the anger she'd carried for 30 years like a shield. The way she'd looked at Gabe Stone and seen only a threat, only an enemy. She'd never even considered that the scarred, leather-clad biker might be protecting people instead of hurting them. Chief Morrison cleared his throat. "Director Matthews, what do you need from us?" "Cooperation, silence, and Officer Chen's resignation would be appreciated, though I can't compel it. No." The word burst from Maggie before she could stop it. Both Matthews and Morrison turned to stare at her. "I mean, let me fix this, please." Matthews raised one elegant eyebrow. "Fix it? How?" "I know this town. Every road, every resident, every hiding place." Maggie stood, her legs shaking but her voice growing stronger. "If these terrorists are local recruits, I can help identify them. I can—" "You've done enough, Officer Chen." "I have." Maggie met the director's gaze squarely. "I've done enough damage. Now let me do something useful." Matthews studied her for a long moment. The wall. Clock ticked. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. Finally, Matthews nodded once. "Agent Stone is being debriefed at a secure location 20 minutes from here. You'll accompany me, you'll listen, and if he believes you can be of assistance, I'll consider it." She paused. "But understand this, Officer Chen. If you put him at further risk, if you compromise this operation again in any way, I will personally ensure you spend the next decade fighting federal charges. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear." "Good." Matthews moved toward the door, then stopped. "And officer, Agent Stone specifically asked that you not be disciplined. He said, and I quote, she was just doing her job." Something flickered in the director's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Most people in his position would want your badge. Think about that. The drive to the safe house passed in tense silence. Maggie sat in the back of Matthews's SUV, watching the familiar landscape of mountain roads blur past. These were the same roads where she'd pulled Gabe over, where she'd been so sure of herself. She'd been wrong about everything. The safe house turned out to be a rented cabin tucked into the pines, innocuous and forgettable. 2 federal agents stood guard at the entrance. Inside, the rustic exterior gave way to banks of computer equipment, communication arrays, and topographical maps spread across every surface. And there, sitting at a folding table with a cup of coffee, was Gabe Stone. He looked up when she entered. His expression held no anger, no resentment, just a quiet, patient understanding that made Maggie want to weep. "Officer Chen," he said softly, "it's good to see you." "I'm so sorry." The words tumbled out before Matthews could speak. "I was wrong. I was so wrong about you, and I'm—" "You had ghosts." Gabe stood, moving with the careful grace of someone who'd survived too many fights. "I saw them when you looked at me. We all carry ghosts, Maggie. I don't blame you for yours." The kindness in his voice broke something open inside her chest. Matthews cleared her throat. "Agent Stone, I've brought Officer Chen as requested, against my better judgment. Appreciated, Director." Gabe gestured to the maps. "I need local knowledge. These men are planning something big, something that'll hurt innocent people, and they're doing it here, in or around Redemption Falls." He looked at Maggie. "You know this town better than anyone. You love it. So do I, believe it or not. Help me protect it." Maggie moved to the table, her professional instincts taking over even as her heart still raced. The maps showed Redemption Falls and the surrounding wilderness. Red marks indicated possible locations. Names she didn't recognize were scrawled in margins. "Tell me everything," she said. And as Gabe began to speak, laying out the threat in calm, measured tones, Maggie Chen began the hard work of redemption. The command post hummed with urgent energy. Maps plastered every wall. Computer screens glowed with surveillance feeds. Federal agents hunched over laptops, tracking phone signals and analyzing intercepts. The air smelled of coffee and tension. Maggie stood at the center of it all, her uniform crisp despite the sleepless hours. Director Matthews barked orders to her team while Maggie studied a hand-drawn map of the abandoned mining facility. 20 miles from town. Deep in the mountains. The perfect place to hide. Her hands trembled slightly as she traced the access roads with her finger. She'd patrolled these routes for 25 years. She knew every turn, every blind spot, every place a person could disappear. Officer Chen. Director Matthews appeared at her shoulder. "You're certain about this location?" Maggie nodded. "The old Copper Ridge mine, closed for 15 years. Locals stay away. The shafts are unstable, but the main building's solid. Security cameras wouldn't reach it. Cell phone coverage is spotty at best." "Perfect place for a safe house," Matthews said grimly. "Or a prison," Maggie whispered. The director's expression softened just a fraction. "We're going to get him back." Maggie wanted to believe it. The guilt sat heavy in her chest, a constant weight that made breathing difficult. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Gabe's face in that holding cell. His quiet dignity. His gentle prayer. The way he'd looked at her with understanding instead of anger. "You were just doing your job, officer." Those words haunted her. Rachel appeared in the doorway, carrying a thermos. "Mom, you need to eat something." "Not now, honey." "Yes, now." Rachel set the thermos down firmly. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse." Maggie met her daughter's eyes and saw the worry there. Rachel had always been the steady one, the one who never gave up on people, the one who'd spent years urging Maggie to let go of her anger. "He talked about Gabe at the ministry," Rachel said softly. "The man you arrested. Did you know he spends every Tuesday night counseling veterans? That he paid for 3 families' rent last winter when they were about to be evicted?" Maggie's throat tightened. "No. He never wanted credit. Pastor Ruiz only told me because I volunteer there." Rachel's voice cracked. "Mom, he's one of the good ones." "I know," Maggie whispered. "I know that now." The tactical team assembled at dusk. Black vehicles lined up in the station parking lot like a funeral procession. Agents checked weapons and communication equipment with practiced efficiency. Maggie watched from the doorway, feeling utterly useless in her civilian role. Director Matthews approached, her face grim. "You're riding with me. We need your knowledge of the terrain." Relief flooded through Maggie. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Matthews handed her a bulletproof vest. "This could go very wrong very fast." They drove in tense silence, the convoy winding through mountain roads as darkness fell. Maggie directed them along back routes, avoiding the main highway. Her heart pounded harder with each mile. Please, let him be alive. Please let us be in time. The prayer came unbidden, surprising her. She hadn't prayed in 30 years, not since Tommy's funeral, but now the words flowed naturally, desperately. The mining facility loomed ahead, a skeletal silhouette against the purple sky. Matthews ordered the convoy to stop a half-mile out. The tactical team would approach on foot, using the forest for cover. "Stay in the vehicle," Matthews ordered Maggie. "That's not negotiable." Maggie nodded, though every instinct screamed to run ahead, to find Gabe, to undo her terrible mistake. She watched through binoculars as the team moved like shadows through the trees. They surrounded the building, positioned at every exit. Matthews gave a sharp hand signal. The breach was swift and professional. Doors crashed open. Shouts echoed across the valley. Maggie gripped the binoculars so hard her knuckles turned white. Minutes stretched like hours. Then her radio crackled. "Command post, we have casualties. Multiple suspects in custody. But," the agent's voice faltered, "he's not here." Maggie's stomach dropped. "What?" "The building's empty except for the suspects. There's evidence Stone was here, but—" Another pause. "You need to see this." Matthews drove them to the facility. Inside, the scene was controlled chaos. Cell members sat in zip ties, silent and defiant. Blood stained the concrete floor. Signs of a struggle were everywhere. But no Gabe. An agent led Maggie to a back room. Her heart stopped. On the far wall, someone had set up a phone mounted on a tripod. The screen glowed with an active video feed. And there, on that screen, was Gabe. He sat in a chair, hands bound behind him. His face was bruised and swollen. Blood crusted his split lip, but his eyes were alert, steady. The camera angle showed a basement with stone walls. Nothing identifiable in the background. "This feed is live," the tech specialist said. "Broadcasting to this location only. It's a message." As if on cue, a figure stepped into the frame beside Gabe. Maggie's world shattered. Deputy Frank Crawford, her protege. The young officer she'd mentored for 8 years. The man she'd trusted like family. Frank's face was twisted with grief and rage as he stared into the camera. "You're watching, aren't you, Chief?" His voice cracked. "I knew you'd find this place. I wanted you to see." "Oh, God," Maggie breathed. "Frank, no." "My boy died alone," Frank continued, tears streaming down his face. "Overdosed on pills that never should have been on our streets. The government did nothing. The system failed him, failed us all." Gabe spoke quietly. "Frank, this isn't the answer. Your son wouldn't want. Don't you talk about my son." Frank's shout echoed through the speakers. "You people, with your wars and your secrets and your lies, you destroy families, and call it patriotism." Maggie stepped closer to the screen, her voice breaking. "Frank, please, where are you? Let's talk. We can fix this." Frank's laugh was bitter. "Fix it? Like you fix things by arresting an innocent man, by judging him for how he looked?" The accusation hit like a physical blow. Maggie had no defense. It was true, all of it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Frank, I'm so sorry about your son, but Gabe isn't your enemy. Neither am I. Please, just tell me where you are." "St. Michael's Church?" Frank's voice went flat. "The basement, where it all began for this town, where the miners used to gather before they went down into the earth." He paused. "Where my boy used to go to youth group before the world broke him." The feed cut to black. Maggie ran for the door, Matthews right behind her. The convoy roared back toward town, sirens silent to avoid alerting Frank. Maggie called ahead to evacuate the area around the church quietly. Inside the command vehicle, she stared at her hands. These hands had filled out Gabe's arrest paperwork, had locked him in that cell, had set in motion the chain of events that led to this nightmare. "Frank's son died 6 months ago," she said to no one in particular. "Opioid overdose. He was 19. Bright kid, wanted to be an engineer." Matthews glanced at her. "That doesn't excuse—" "I know." Maggie's voice broke. "But I should have seen how much pain Frank was in. I should have helped him. Instead, I was so focused on my own ghosts, my own anger, that I missed what was right in front of me." "You can't blame yourself for his choices." "Can't I?" Maggie met the director's eyes. "I taught him that it was okay to judge people by their appearance, that bikers were criminals by default, that the world was black and white, good guys and bad guys." She looked away. "I made him in my own image." The truth of it settled over her like a weight. She hadn't just failed Gabe, she'd failed Frank too. The convoy pulled up 2 blocks from St. Michael's Church. The beautiful stone building stood peaceful in the gathering night, its stained glass windows glowing softly from within. Maggie had avoided this place for 3 decades. Now she would enter it to save 2 men she'd hurt through her own blindness. Matthews assembled the team. "Basement entry points?" 2, Maggie said. "Main stairs from inside the church, and an exterior coal chute on the north side from when they heated with coal." "Could be rigged," an agent warned. "Everything could be rigged," Matthews said grimly. "But we're out of time." Maggie stepped forward. "Let me go in first. Alone." The command team erupted in protests, but she held up her hand. "He's my deputy. My responsibility. And right now, I'm the only person who might be able to reach him." She looked at Matthews. "You know I'm right." Matthews hesitated, then nodded. The team moved into position, and Maggie walked toward the church, every step steady, with the resolve to set things right. The basement of St. Michael's Church fell silent after Frank's confession. Federal agents had secured the other cell members, and Maggie helped a battered Gabe to his feet, supporting his weight as they climbed the narrow coal chute stairs toward fresh air and dawn light. But the relief lasted only moments. Director Matthews burst through the church's main doors, her face ashen. "We have a problem." Maggie's stomach dropped. "What do you mean? Frank gave us all the locations. Elliot Voss wasn't at the mine." Matthews pulled out her tablet, her fingers flying across the screen. "He's their leader, their ideological center, and our techs just intercepted a coded transmission. There's a failsafe device we didn't know about." Gabe steadied himself against the stone wall. Blood seeped through the makeshift bandage on his arm, but his voice was strong. "Where?" "The municipal water treatment plant." Matthews looked directly at Maggie. "It's not just a bomb. Intelligence suggests it's a chemical dispersion device designed to contaminate the town's water supply for months, maybe years. Voss has someone in place, a technical specialist named Caleb Turner." The words hit Maggie like a physical blow. The water plant served all of Redemption Falls. Every home, every family, every child who turned on a faucet or took a shower. The 4th of July celebration was one thing, but this would poison the entire town for generations. "How long do we have?" Maggie's voice came out hoarse. "We don't know. The device could be on a timer, or Turner could trigger it remotely if he realizes we've taken down the others." Matthews gestured to the tactical team assembling outside. "We're mobilizing now." Rachel appeared at Maggie's elbow, her face pale but determined. "Mom, I know the plant supervisor, Tom Rivera. He attends St. Michael's. I can call him. Get blueprints. Do it." Maggie squeezed her daughter's hand. "Quickly." Within minutes, they had the layout spread across the hood of a patrol car. The water treatment plant sprawled across 5 acres on the eastern edge of town, all industrial pipes and chemical tanks and endless corridors. 1,000 places to hide a device. Frank, now in handcuffs but cooperative, leaned over the map. His eyes were red-rimmed from tears, but his voice was steady. "Caleb Turner. I only met him twice. Voss kept him isolated. But I know he has military demolitions training. He'll have placed it somewhere that maximizes contamination, but protects the device from discovery." Gabe studied the blueprint, his jaw tight. "The main filtration chamber. If you contaminate the water after treatment but before distribution, it reaches every tap in town without triggering the usual safety protocols." Matthews gave a curt nod. "Take a team in. We'll evacuate the plant workers and establish a perimeter." "No?" Maggie's voice cut through the morning air. She looked at Frank, seeing not the traitor who'd betrayed her, but the broken man who'd lost his son and made terrible choices out of unbearable grief. "We need someone who understands Voss's thinking, someone who knows how they planned this." Frank met her gaze, understanding dawning. "You want me to help defuse it. Can you?" "My son." Frank's voice cracked. "Before he died, before the pills took everything, Danny wanted to be an engineer. We used to work on projects together, electronics, timers, circuits. I learned enough to be dangerous, which is why Voss recruited me in the first place." Maggie turned to Matthews. "He goes in with us." The director's expression was thunderous. "He's a suspect." "He's our best chance." Gabe stepped forward despite his injuries. "I've spent 3 years learning how these people think. They don't trust outsiders with critical knowledge. If Frank helped plan this, he's the only one who can help undo it." The silence stretched taut as a wire. Finally, Matthews exhaled. 10 minutes. That's all I can give you before I have to order the entire town evacuated, and that will cause panic. If this goes public before we neutralize the threat, the resulting chaos could be worse than the contamination." The drive to the water plant took 7 minutes. Maggie sat in the back of the SUV with Gabe and Frank, the weight of what they were about to attempt pressing down on all of them. Through the window, she could see Redemption Falls waking up, people walking dogs, opening shops, hanging American flags for tomorrow's celebration. all of them unaware of the poison waiting in the pipes beneath their feet. "I'm sorry, Maggie." Frank's voice was barely a whisper. "For everything. For letting my grief turn into hate. For betraying everything you taught me." Maggie looked at the young man she'd mentored, seeing the good officer he'd been before tragedy twisted him. "I'm sorry, too. Sorry I was so focused on my own ghosts that I didn't see yours. Sorry I taught you to judge first and ask questions later. That's on me, Frank." "You showed me something different tonight," he said quietly. "You went into that basement unarmed because you believed people could change. You believed I could change. Because someone showed me the same thing." Maggie glanced at Gabe, whose eyes were closed in prayer. "It's not too late to be who you were meant to be, Frank. Your son would want you to save these people." The SUV screeched to a halt outside the plant's main gate. The facility stretched before them, a maze of concrete and steel. Workers evacuated in orderly lines, confusion written on their faces but trusting the authorities who'd arrived. Inside the main filtration chamber, the air was thick with the smell of chlorine and machinery. Massive tanks hummed around them, pipes snaking in every direction. Matthews's bomb techs spread out with detection equipment, their movements precise and professional. But it was Gabe who found it. "Here." He knelt beside a service panel beneath the primary distribution tank. Behind the panel, nestled among legitimate equipment, was a device that made Maggie's blood run cold. It was roughly the size of a car battery, covered in wires and circuit boards, with 2 sealed containers of amber liquid connected to a timer. The timer read 000447, 4 minutes and 47 seconds. Frank dropped to his knees beside it, his hands shaking as he studied the mechanism. "Oh, God. Oh, God, this is— Can you do it?" Maggie's voice was calm, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "The timer's connected to a motion sensor. If we try to move it, it triggers immediately, and there are redundant circuits. If I cut the wrong wire, same result." Frank's breath came in short gasps. "Voss designed this. It's everything we discussed, but he added complications I didn't know about." 000412. Gabe placed a steady hand on Frank's shoulder. "You're not the man who helped build this anymore. You're the man who's going to stop it. Breathe. Think. Your son's watching." Frank closed his eyes, his lips moving in what might have been a prayer. When he opened them again, something had shifted. His hands steadied. "The chemical containers are the key. They're connected to a distribution mechanism triggered by the timer, but there's a manual shut-off valve." His fingers traced the wiring. "Here. If I can close it before the timer reaches 0, the device can't disperse the contamination even if it detonates." 000330. "But you'll need to disarm the motion sensor first," one of the bomb techs said, "or we can't get close enough to reach the valve." Frank nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. "The sensor's powered by this circuit. If I can interrupt it for just 2 seconds, that's enough time to— "To what?" Maggie asked. "For someone to reach past and manually close the valve." Frank looked up at her. "It's a one-handed operation, but the timing has to be perfect. The second the circuit interrupts, you have maybe 3 seconds before a backup activator engages." 000258. "I'll do it," Gabe said immediately. "No." Maggie's voice was firm. "You're injured. Your reaction time isn't what it needs to be. This is my town, my people, my responsibility." Their eyes met, and in that moment, Gabe saw the transformation complete. This was no longer the rigid, prejudiced officer who'd arrested him. This was a woman who'd stared into her own darkness and chosen light. "On your count, Frank," Maggie said, positioning herself beside the device. 000220. Frank's hands moved with surprising steadiness, tracing wires, double-checking connections. Around them, the bomb techs had evacuated everyone else from the chamber. It was just the 3 of them now. The mentor, the protege, and the man who'd shown them both a different way. "Maggie," Gabe said quietly, "Rachel loves you very much. If this doesn't—" "It will." Maggie's voice carried absolute conviction. "Because we're not doing this alone." 00:130. Ready, Frank announced. I'm going to cut the sensor circuit. The instant I do, you reach in and turn that valve clockwise until it stops. Don't hesitate. Don't second guess. Just trust. I trust you, Frank. Arrow 1, Shukwak. The numbers fell like rain. 59, 58, 57. Frank positioned the wire cutters. Maggie extended her arm, ready. 30 seconds. On 3, Frank said. 1. Maggie's whole world narrowed to the valve, barely visible behind the wiring. 2. She thought of Rachel, of Gabe's quiet faith, of the town that bore the name of redemption. 3. Frank cut the wire. Maggie's hand shot forward, her fingers finding the valve. She twisted with all her strength, feeling the mechanism resist, then give. Once, twice, 3 full rotations until it stopped. The timer froze. For a long second, nothing moved. Then the bomb techs surged forward, securing the device as the chamber filled with a sound like a collective, exhausted breath. The heavy door of St. Michael's Church basement swung open. Maggie stepped inside, alone. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands were steady. She'd left her service weapon with Rachel upstairs. No vest, no backup visible. Just a woman in jeans and a flannel shirt, walking into the lion's den. The basement smelled of old stone and mildew. Overhead bulbs cast harsh shadows across the space that had once hosted youth group meetings and community dinners. Now it looked like a war room. Maps tacked to walls, equipment cases stacked in corners, and in the center, Gabe Stone. He sat bound to a metal chair, his face bruised and swollen. Blood had dried at the corner of his mouth, but his eyes, those calm, knowing eyes, met hers without fear. Frank Crawford stood beside him, a pistol loose in his right hand. "Frank," Maggie said quietly, "it's just me." Her former protege looked like he'd aged a decade in 6 months. His face was gaunt, his eyes ringed with sleepless nights. The grief had carved deep lines around his mouth. "You shouldn't have come, Maggie." His voice cracked. "I didn't want you here for this." "I know you didn't." She took a slow step forward, her hands visible and open. "Because the man I know, the deputy who worked doubles to help new officers, who coached Little League every summer, that man doesn't want anyone to get hurt." "That man's son died alone on a bathroom floor." Frank's shout echoed off the stone walls. The pistol trembled. 19 years old, Maggie. 19, and nobody cared. The VA turned him away. The doctors kept writing prescriptions. The government that sent him to war threw him away like garbage. Maggie's throat tightened. She'd been so consumed by her own ghosts that she'd missed the warning signs. Frank's increasing bitterness, his rants about the system, his withdrawal from the station family, just like she'd missed who Gabe really was. "You're right," she said. "Danny deserved better. You deserved better. And I failed you, Frank. I was your sergeant, and I didn't see your pain." Frank blinked, thrown off balance by her admission. "I was too busy nursing my own anger," Maggie continued, moving another careful step closer. "Too busy seeing enemies in everyone who didn't look like they belonged. Too busy being right to actually do right." She gestured toward Gabe. "This man? I arrested him because of his patches and his tattoos. I saw a criminal instead of a person, just like I taught you to see threats instead of people." "He's CIA," Frank spat. "He's part of the machine. He's a father who lost his son." Maggie's voice broke. "Just like you. Just like me." Gabe's quiet voice cut through the tension. "His name was Michael. He was 16. Gang violence in Detroit 8 years ago." Frank's head jerked toward him. "After the funeral," Gabe continued, his words slow and deliberate despite the pain, "I wanted to burn the world down. I was so angry I couldn't breathe. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't pray." "Then how?" Frank's grip on the pistol wavered. "A veteran's ministry. A pastor who'd lost someone, too. He sat with me while I raged. Let me scream at God, and when I had nothing left, he said, 'Now what? You can let this destroy you, or you can honor Michael by protecting other people's children.'" Tears streamed down Frank's face. Maggie took another step. She was only 10 feet away now. "Danny was a good kid, Frank. I remember when he got that scholarship. You were so proud." "He came back broken." Frank's voice was a whisper. "The VA kept saying there was nothing wrong. The pills were supposed to help, but they didn't. They just made it worse, and I didn't know how to save him." "You couldn't have saved him," Gabe said gently. "I know because I tried to save Michael. Monitored his friends, moved neighborhoods, quit my job to be home more. None of it mattered. When someone's in that much pain, sometimes they make choices we can't control." The pistol lowered slightly. "But this?" Gabe continued. "Hurting innocent people who had nothing to do with Danny's death? That won't honor his memory. It'll just create more fathers standing at more graves, feeling exactly what you feel right now." Frank's face crumpled. "I don't know how to stop hurting." Maggie closed the distance between them and gently took the pistol from his shaking hand. She set it on a nearby table, then pulled Frank into a fierce embrace. "I know," she whispered. "I've been hurting for 30 years, but this isn't the answer. Trust me, Reiki. I almost destroyed an innocent man because I let my pain make my decisions." Frank sobbed against her shoulder, deep, racking cries that shook his whole body. Over his shoulder, Maggie met Gabe's eyes. The compassion she saw there, even after everything Frank had done, nearly broke her. "The attack," she said softly into Frank's ear. "Tell me about the attack. It's not too late to stop it." Frank pulled back, wiping his face with trembling hands. "Tomorrow, the 4th of July celebration. Main stage, the food court, and the kids' play area. 3 devices. Elliot said it would send a message." Maggie's blood ran cold. Hundreds of families, children. "Where's Elliot now?" she asked. "I don't know. He left 2 hours ago. Said he had to check the final placement." Frank's eyes widened with fresh horror as the reality of what he'd helped plan crashed over him. Oh God, what have I done?" The door at the top of the basement stairs burst open. Federal agents poured down, weapons drawn. Director Matthews descended behind them, her expression granite hard. "Clear the room," she ordered. Maggie raised her hands, keeping herself between the agents and Frank. "He's surrendering. He just gave us the targets." Matthews studied Frank's broken posture, then nodded curtly. "Cuff him, gently." While agents secured Frank, Maggie moved to Gabe's chair. Her hands shook as she worked the knots binding his wrists. The rope had cut deep, leaving raw wounds. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for all of it." "I know." He winced as the ropes fell away, then reached up to briefly touch her hand. "You came for me. That's what matters." 3 devices, Matthews was saying into her phone, pacing the basement. "Town Square, 4th of July celebration. Evacuate immediately and get bomb squads rolling." An agent helped Gabe to his feet. He swayed and Maggie steadied him. "We need medical," she called out. "I'm fine," Gabe insisted, though the pallor of his face suggested otherwise. "You're not fine," Maggie said firmly, "and for once I'd like to make the right call about you." A ghost of a smile crossed his battered features. Matthews ended her call and approached Frank, who stood hunched between 2 agents, his face a mask of regret. "Where exactly did Elliot place the devices?" she demanded. "I don't know the exact locations," Frank said miserably. "Only the general areas. He wouldn't tell anyone specifics. Said it was operational security." "What about Caleb?" Matthews pressed. Frank's head snapped up. "What?" "Caleb Turner. Your cell's technical specialist. Where is he?" "Caleb went dark 3 days ago. Elliot said he had a separate assignment." Maggie's stomach dropped. A separate assignment. A failsafe. Matthews's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression hardened further. "Say that again." The command post went silent. "Intercept confirms it," Matthews said after she hung up. "Coded transmission sent 30 minutes ago. The park celebration was a diversion. The real target is the municipal water treatment plant." Frank went white. No. Elliot never mentioned—" "He wouldn't have," Gabe said grimly. "You were never fully inside. None of the cell members were. Elliot kept the real plan compartmentalized. Matthews was already moving, shouting orders into her radio. "Lock down the treatment plant. Nobody interested." Or out. "Get me schematics and the facility supervisor." Maggie's mind raced. The water plant served all of Redemption Falls. A chemical attack there could poison the entire town for years. She helped Gabe toward the stairs, but he pulled back. "Frank," Gabe said, "did Elliot ever discuss the plant? Anything at all?" Frank struggled to think through his anguish. He made me research filtration systems. Said he needed to understand infrastructure vulnerabilities for future operations. I thought it was theoretical." "What did you tell him?" Gabe pressed gently. "Main, filtration chamber, chemical injection points, security rotations." Frank's voice cracked. "I gave him everything." Matthews grabbed Maggie's arm. "Can you get us the plant blueprints?" "Rachel," Maggie said immediately. "My daughter works with the social services office. Tom Rivera, the plant supervisor, runs the veteran support group she coordinates. She can reach him." "Make the call." Within minutes, they were racing toward the water treatment plant in a convoy of federal vehicles. Maggie rode with Matthews and Gabe, who refused to stay behind despite his injuries. Rachel had worked miracles. Tom Rivera met them at the gate, blueprints already spread across the hood of his truck. "Main filtration chamber," he said, tapping the diagram. "That's where you'd place something if you wanted maximum dispersal into the system." "Can you shut it down remotely?" Matthews asked. "No. Everything's manual. Safety protocol. You have to be on site. Evacuate your workers, now." As Rivera made the calls, Maggie studied the diagrams, committing the access points and potential choke points to memory, while agents donned protective gear and moved toward the plant, every second feeling like a lifetime. The old mining facility hunched against the darkening sky like a dying beast. Maggie pressed her face closer to the cold window of the command vehicle, watching as federal agents in tactical gear fanned out across the property. Her chest felt tight. Somewhere inside those crumbling walls, Gabe Stone was waiting. She prayed he was still alive. Director Matthews spoke into her headset, coordinating teams with precise military language. Maggie barely heard her. Every muscle in her body wanted to sprint toward those buildings, to tear apart every door until she found him. But she forced herself to remain still. These agents knew what they were doing. Her rushing in would only get people killed. "Thermal imaging shows 4 heat signatures in the main building," an agent reported through the radio. "Second floor, northwest corner." 4 people. Was one of them Gabe? Maggie's hands curled into fists. "Move in," Matthews ordered. The agents advanced like shadows. Maggie held her breath as they reached the entrance. The rusted door gave way with a metallic shriek. Then everything happened fast. Shouting, commands, the sound of boots pounding through corridors. "Clear! Clear! Room secured!" Maggie's heart hammered. Then a different voice crackled through. "We have 3 suspects in custody. No sign of Stone." The air left her lungs. He wasn't here. Matthews's jaw tightened. "Continue the sweep." 20 minutes later, the grim truth settled over them. The mining facility held 3 radicalized ex-military men, ammunition, propaganda materials, and detailed maps of Redemption Falls. But Gabe Stone was nowhere to be found. Maggie sat in the back of the vehicle, staring at nothing. She'd been so certain. How could she have been wrong? An agent handed Matthews a cell phone recovered from one of the suspects. "Ma'am, there's a video queued up. I think you should see this." Matthews pressed play. The screen filled with a grainy image of a basement. Water-stained concrete walls, a single bare bulb swinging overhead. And there, Maggie's stomach dropped, was Gabe. He sat bound to a chair, his face bruised. Blood dried at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were steady despite the obvious pain. He looked directly at the camera with the same calm expression he'd worn in her jail cell days ago. "Officer Chen." His voice was rough but clear. "If you're watching this, you found the safe house, but I'm not there anymore." Maggie leaned forward, her throat constricting. The camera shifted, and a figure stepped into frame beside Gabe. Maggie's world tilted. Deputy Frank Crawford. No. Frank looked nothing like the fresh-faced young officer she'd mentored for 5 years. His eyes were hollowed out by grief, his jaw clenched with rage barely contained beneath the surface. His hand rested on Gabe's shoulder, not gently, but possessively, like a hunter posing with a trophy. "Hello, Maggie." Frank's voice cracked. "Bet you didn't see this coming. Your perfect protege. The kid you taught everything to." Maggie couldn't breathe. She felt Matthew's hand on her shoulder, steadying her, but it did nothing to stop the room from spinning. "You want to know where we are?" Frank continued. "You'll figure it out. You always do. You're the best cop in Redemption Falls, right? That's what you always told me." His laugh was bitter. "But you never noticed I was falling apart. You never asked why I stopped eating lunch with you, or why my hands shook during briefings." Gabe shifted slightly in the chair. "Frank," he said quietly, "it's not too late. You can still—" "Shut up." Frank's hand clenched. "You don't get to talk. You people destroyed my life. The government, the VA, all of you. My son Danny came home from Afghanistan with nightmares so bad he couldn't sleep. The VA gave him pills that turned him into a stranger. And when he needed real help, when he was drowning, they put him on a waiting list." His voice broke. "He died, waiting. 19 years old, and he died alone in his apartment with a bottle of pills that were supposed to help him." Tears streamed down Frank's face now. Maggie felt her own eyes, burning. "I'm sorry about your son," Gabe said, his voice gentle despite his situation. "I lost my boy too. Michael, he was 17 when—" "I don't care about your sob story," Frank shouted, but his hand trembled. "This system is broken. Someone has to send a message. Someone has to make them pay attention." The camera angle shifted again, and Maggie's blood turned to ice. Behind Gabe and Frank, she could see stained glass windows, geometric patterns in faded blues and reds. She knew those windows. St. Michael's Church. The old church on Elm Street had been closed for renovations for 3 months. The basement was accessible through an outside entrance near the old coal chute, and Frank knew it well. His son Danny had attended youth group there before his deployment. "We're in the place where my boy used to pray," Frank said, as if reading her mind. "Before the war, before the pills, before everything good got ripped away." He leaned closer to the camera. "You've got until tomorrow, Maggie. 4th of July. When all those families gather in the town square for their picnics and fireworks. All those people who have no idea what it costs to keep them safe." "Frank, please," Gabe said. "Think about what you're doing." "I've thought about nothing else for 6 months." Frank's expression hardened. "You'll understand soon enough." The video ended. Silence filled the command vehicle. Maggie couldn't move, couldn't speak. The boy she'd trained, the young deputy she'd taken under her wing after his father died, was planning to attack her town, her people, and it was her fault. She'd been so focused on her own grief, her own rigid rules, her own need to prove herself after Tommy's death that she'd missed Frank's pain entirely. She'd taught him to see threats everywhere, to trust no one outside their own, to draw hard lines between good guys and bad guys. She'd reinforced every prejudice he'd absorbed after losing Danny. She'd created this monster. "Maggie." Matthews's voice cut through the fog. "Talk to me. Where is he?" Maggie found her voice. "St. Michael's Church, basement entrance on the north side. The main stairs are locked, but there's an old coal chute. I know the location." Rachel's voice came from the doorway of the command vehicle. Maggie's daughter stood there, her face pale, but determined. "I volunteered there last summer, helping sort donations. I can show you the layout." Matthews was already mobilizing teams, issuing rapid-fire orders. But Maggie barely registered the activity around her. She stared at the frozen image on the phone screen. Frank's broken expression, Gabe's compassionate eyes. 2 men shaped by loss. 2 men who'd chosen different paths. And somewhere in that church basement, those paths would collide. "I'm going in," Maggie said quietly. Matthews turned. "Absolutely not. You're emotionally compromised, and he knows your tactics. He's my responsibility. Maggie stood, meeting the director's gaze. I trained him. I failed him, and I'm the only one who might be able to reach him before this goes any further. Maggie, no! Rachel grabbed her mother's arm. You can't! He could kill you. Maybe. Maggie covered her daughter's hand with her own. For the first time in 3 decades, she spoke words she thought she'd never say again. But I have to try, and I need to pray first. Rachel's eyes widened. You were right, honey, about everything. Maggie's voice cracked. I've been running from God since your Uncle Tommy died. I've been so angry, so sure I knew better than anyone else. But look where it got me. Look what I almost did to Gabe. Look what I did to Frank by ignoring his pain. She turned to Matthews. Give me one chance. Let me go in alone, unarmed. If anyone can get through to him, it's me. And if I can't, she swallowed hard, then do whatever you have to do to save those people. Matthews studied her for a long moment. 10 minutes, she finally said. You get 10 minutes to talk him down. After that, we breach. Maggie nodded. It would have to be enough. As the teams mobilized and Rachel sketched the church layout, Maggie stepped outside into the gathering darkness. Stars were beginning to appear overhead. The same stars that had watched over Redemption Falls for 100 years. She closed her eyes and spoke into the silence. God, I don't know if you're listening. I don't know if you even remember me after all these years. But I'm asking, no, I'm begging. Please, help me save that boy, help me save Gabe, and help me finally become the person I should have been all along. The night offered no answer. But for the first time since Tommy's funeral, Maggie felt something shift inside her chest. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was just the beginning of true humility. Either way, she had work to do. The basement of St. Michael's Church felt like a tomb. Maggie's footsteps echoed softly on the ancient stone floor as she descended the coal chute's narrow stairwell, each step carrying her deeper into the place where her faith had died 30 years ago. She could still remember Tommy's funeral reception in the hall upstairs, the well-meaning platitudes from neighbors, the empty promises that God had a plan. This was where it all ended, where she'd stopped believing in anything beyond her own judgment. Frank stood 20 feet away, his service weapon pointed at the ground, his face hollowed by grief. Gabe sat in a metal folding chair, his wrists bound with zip ties behind him. Blood had dried on his temple, but his eyes remained steady, watching Frank with something that looked like compassion rather than fear. I thought you'd send the tactical team, Frank said quietly. His voice cracked. I thought you'd play it safe, Maggie. You always play it safe. I used to, she said, taking another careful step forward. She kept her hands visible, her movements slow and deliberate. I used to think playing it safe meant following every rule in the book, making quick decisions based on what I saw on the surface. Frank's jaw tightened. You taught me that. You taught me to trust my instincts, to act decisively. I taught you wrong, Maggie said. The admission felt like pulling shrapnel from her chest. I taught you what I learned from my own pain, from Tommy's death. I turned my grief into armor, Frank, and I dressed you in the same thing. Don't. Frank's hand trembled. Don't you dare make this about guilt. Don't you dare stand there and pretend you understand what I lost. You're right. I don't understand what you lost. Maggie took another step. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed and flickered. Danny was your boy, your only child. He came home broken from Afghanistan, and the people who promised to help him failed. They put pills in his hand instead of healing in his heart. Frank's face crumpled. They killed him. The VA, the doctors, the whole rotten system. He was 19, Maggie. He'd survived firefights in Kandahar, and he came home to die alone in his apartment because nobody cared enough to save him. You're wrong about that last part, Gabe said quietly. His voice was rough but gentle. You cared. You loved him. That matters more than you know. Frank swung the weapon toward Gabe. Shut up. You don't get to talk about my son. You people sent him over there. You and your wars and your flags and your patriotic speeches about sacrifice." "You're right," Gabe said simply. "We did. I wore the uniform, same as Danny. I know what we asked of boys like him." "Then you know why this has to happen." Frank's voice rose, echoing off the stone walls. "Tomorrow, when those families gather in the park, when they wave their flags and sing their songs, they need to understand what their comfort costs, what their ignorance destroys." "Frank," Maggie said softly. She was close enough now to see the tears streaming down his face. "Listen to me. I know about wanting the world to hurt the way you hurt. After Tommy died, I wanted everyone to feel what I felt. I wanted to punish every biker I saw because one of them took my brother from me." She gestured toward Gabe. "I arrested this man because of what he wore, because of the patches on his jacket and the scars on his face. I didn't see him. I saw my pain dressed up like justice." "It was justice," Frank whispered. "You were protecting the town." "No," Maggie's voice broke. "I was protecting myself from feeling, from facing the truth that sometimes terrible things happen and there's nobody to blame. Tommy made choices. He climbed on that motorcycle, knowing the risks. His death wasn't about punishment or justice. It was about loss. Just loss." Frank's hand lowered slightly. "Danny didn't choose to get sick. He asked for help and they gave him pills that made everything worse." "You're right. He deserved better." Maggie was 10 feet away now. "But Frank, those families tomorrow, those children in the park, they're not the people who failed Danny. They're not the doctors or the bureaucrats or the system that broke your heart. They're just people trying to live their lives. People who love their children the same way you loved yours." "They don't care," Frank said, but his voice wavered. "Nobody cares until it's their kid." "That's where you're wrong," Gabe said. He leaned forward, despite the zip ties, his voice carrying the weight of hard experience. 6 months after I joined the CIA, I got a call that my son Michael was gone. 17 years old. Wrong place, wrong time, caught in gang crossfire walking home from a friend's house." Frank's eyes widened. His weapon hand trembled. "For 2 years," Gabe continued, "I wanted to burn the world down. I wanted everyone to feel what I felt. I took this job because I thought hunting bad guys would fill the hole Michael left behind." He paused, his scarred face softening. "But revenge doesn't bring them back, brother. Hurting others doesn't heal the hurt inside us." "How did you survive it?" Frank's question came out like a gasp. "I almost didn't." Gabe's eyes glistened. "Until a man at a veterans ministry told me something I'll never forget. He said, 'The best way to honor the dead is to protect the living.' That's what Michael would have wanted. That's what Danny would want too." Frank's shoulders shook. The weapon dipped toward the floor. Maggie closed the distance between them, her hand reaching out slowly. "Frank, I failed you. I was so busy being the tough cop, the one who never bent, that I didn't see you breaking right in front of me. I should have noticed. I should have asked. I should have been the mentor you deserved instead of the one I thought you needed." "I wanted to make them understand," Frank sobbed. "I wanted them to know what it feels like." "I know." Maggie's fingers touched the barrel of his weapon, gently guiding it downward. "But this isn't the way. This isn't how we honor the boys we lost. Danny wouldn't want this." "He'd hate me for this," Frank whispered. "He'd be so ashamed." "No," Gabe said firmly. "He'd be proud you're stopping, proud you chose to honor his memory by saving lives instead of taking them." Frank let the weapon fall. It clattered on the stone floor as he collapsed forward into Maggie's arms, his body racked with sobs that seemed to come from the deepest part of his soul. She held him the way she wished someone had held her 30 years ago, the way she'd been too proud and too angry to let anyone hold her. "I'm so sorry," Frank gasped. "Maggie, I'm so sorry. The town square tomorrow during the fireworks. 3 devices. Main stage, food court, kids' play area. I researched the placements. I helped them plan it." "It's okay," Maggie said, even as her blood ran cold. "You're telling us now. That's what matters." Above them, she heard the thunder of boots on stairs. Director Matthews' voice crackled through a hidden earpiece. Maggie had forgotten she was wearing. "We're coming in. Stand clear." Federal agents poured into the basement, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands. Frank raised his hands immediately, surrendering without resistance. Maggie stepped back as they secured him, her heart breaking for the young man she'd failed to save from his own darkness. Gabe stood as an agent cut his zip ties. He rubbed his wrists, wincing, but immediately moved toward Frank. "You did the right thing," he told him. "You chose life over death. That took more courage than anything else you could have done." Frank looked up at him through swollen eyes. "I almost killed you." "But you didn't," Gabe said simply. "And tomorrow, because of what you just told us, hundreds of people will go home to their families. That's your son's real legacy now. Not pain. Protection." Director Matthews appeared at Maggie's shoulder. "Officer Chen, I need you to tell me everything he said about the devices. Locations, timing, any details." Maggie's mind snapped back into focus. "Main stage, food court, and kids' play area in the town square. Set to detonate during tomorrow's fireworks display. Maximum casualties and chaos." Matthews spoke rapidly into her radio, coordinating with the bomb squad already en route. Around them, agents were processing the basement, photographing evidence, securing the scene. Rachel appeared in the doorway, her face pale. When she saw Maggie standing unharmed, relief flooded her features. "Mom, I'm okay," Maggie said. She looked at Gabe, then at Frank being led away in handcuffs, then back at her daughter. "We're all going to be okay." But even as she said it, she felt the weight of tomorrow pressing down. 3 bombs hidden somewhere in the heart of her town. 3 devices designed to tear apart the celebration she'd protected for 25 years. The real test was just beginning. The morning breeze carried the smell of fresh coffee and grilled burgers through the town square as families spread blankets on the grass. 3 months had passed since that terrible night, and Redemption Falls had earned its name at last. Maggie stood backstage at the community pavilion, her uniform pressed sharp for the last time. Through the curtain gap, she watched children chase each other between folding chairs while their parents chatted and laughed. The sight made her throat tight. "You ready for this?" Rachel squeezed her mother's hand. "As ready as I'll ever be." Maggie smoothed her badge one final time. The metal felt heavier today, or maybe she just noticed the weight after carrying it for 25 years. Rachel's eyes shone with pride. "Dad would be proud. I know I am." The mention of Tommy, her husband, not her brother, sent warmth through Maggie's chest instead of the familiar ache. Time hadn't erased the loss, but forgiveness had softened its edges. She pulled Rachel close and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Your turn, Officer Chen." Chief Morrison appeared beside them, his weathered face creased in a rare smile. "Well, I suppose I should say officer while I still can." Maggie stepped into the sunlight to applause that rolled across the crowd like thunder. She gripped the podium, her prepared speech suddenly feeling hollow against everything she wanted to say. 25 years ago, I put on this badge thinking I knew exactly what it meant." Her voice carried across the square, steady despite the emotion swelling in her chest. "I thought being a good cop meant following every rule, enforcing every law, never bending, never questioning." She spotted Gabe near the back, leaning against a tree with his arms crossed. Even in jeans and a simple t-shirt, his presence commanded respect. The scars on his face caught the light. "I was wrong." The crowd quieted. 3 months ago, I arrested a man because of how he looked, because of the patches on his vest and the bike he rode, because 30 years of grief had hardened my heart into something that couldn't see past my own pain. Maggie's voice broke, but she pushed through. "I almost cost this town everything because I refused to see the humanity in someone who didn't fit my narrow view of what goodness looked like." Mothers pulled their children closer. Veterans nodded slowly. Chief Morrison stood straighter. "Gabriel Stone saved this town, not despite who he is, but because of it. His faith, his courage, his willingness to sacrifice everything to protect people who would have judged him the same way I did." She found Gabe's eyes across the distance. "He showed me what real service looks like, what real faith looks like, and he forgave me when I didn't deserve it." Tears streamed down Rachel's face now. Pastor Daniel Ruiz sat in the front row, his hands folded in prayer. "My protege, Deputy Frank Crawford, nearly destroyed everything we hold dear because his grief consumed him the same way mine consumed me. But even in his darkest moment, he chose redemption over revenge. He helped save every single person here today." Maggie gripped the podium harder. "Frank is serving his sentence with grace and purpose. He's teaching other inmates about finding hope in the darkest places. And I visit him every week because he's still family. He always will be." The applause started small but built into something powerful. "I'm retiring from the force today to attend seminary. I've spent 3 decades running from God, hiding behind rules and duty, instead of facing my own brokenness." Maggie wiped her eyes. "But a man I wrongfully arrested taught me that faith isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to see differently, to love bigger, to admit when you're wrong, and do whatever it takes to make things right." She unbuckled her gun belt and laid it carefully on the podium. The badge gleamed in the sunlight one last time before she unpinned it and placed it beside the leather. Redemption Falls lived up to its name this year, not because we were perfect, but because we chose grace over judgment, love over fear, second chances over final condemnation. Her voice strengthened. "And I'm living proof that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be." The standing ovation washed over her like a wave. Maggie stepped down from the stage into Rachel's embrace, then found herself surrounded by townspeople who'd watched her patrol their streets for a quarter-century. Gabe waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. His smile was gentle. "That was brave," he said simply. "I learned from the best." Maggie pulled him into a hug that surprised them both. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "We're family now." Gabe's voice was rough with emotion. "That's what family does." They walked together toward the ministry tent where Pastor Daniel was organizing the Veterans Outreach booth. The tent buzzed with activity. Former soldiers helping current ones navigate benefits, find housing, connect with counselors. Gabe's vision had transformed into something beautiful. Frank's wife, Linda, worked one of the tables. She caught Maggie's eye and waved. The gesture held no bitterness, only shared understanding of grief and grace. "He's doing better," Linda said when Maggie stopped by. "Your visits mean everything to him, to all of us." "He saved this town," Maggie said firmly. "I'll make sure everyone remembers that." As evening approached, Maggie sat on a blanket between Rachel and Gabe, their hands linked as the first firework exploded overhead in brilliant gold. The crowd gasped and cheered. Children squealed with delight. "I almost destroyed you because of how you looked," Maggie said quietly, watching the colors paint the sky. Gabe smiled, his tattoos visible in the flashing light. "But you didn't. You chose to see differently. That's the miracle, Maggie." Rachel leaned against her mother's shoulder. "What's the first thing you'll study at seminary?" "Forgiveness." Maggie watched another burst of red and blue cascade across the darkness. "How to give it, how to receive it, how to live it every single day." "Sounds like you've already started," Gabe said. The finale began, dozens of fireworks launching simultaneously, filling the sky with impossible beauty. All around them, families celebrated in safety because broken people had chosen redemption over revenge, grace over judgment, love over fear. Maggie closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of thanks. Not to a distant, angry God she'd imagined for 3 decades, but to the loving Father Gabe had shown her through his quiet faith and unshakable compassion. When she opened her eyes, Gabe was watching her with understanding. "Welcome home," he said. And as the last firework faded into smoke and stars, Maggie Chen, former officer, future pastor, forever daughter, finally, truly was.